A lot of my game dev buddies and a lot of my followers have been talking lately about demographic expansions, how exactly people figure out what kind of video game is going to sell, who they should sell it to, trying to figure out what is a possible number for this game, what should I set my budget limit at, stuff like that. And everyone was talking about how a game, Remember Me, was denied from a lot of publishers because strictly it had a female character. And the people at the publishing role would go so far as to say, this game is going to fail because we believe that a female character cannot sell a video game. They were going so I probably said it a little bit more intelligently than they did, but more or less the end result was female character equal bad game sales. The only problem with that statement is that they have no actual proof, just like we do for everything else inside the game industry. On a daily basis, you could say trying to figure out if a violent video game versus a non-violent video game has the same results, to finally put an end to the mystery once and for all. Unfortunately, a lot of the scientific reports that are done usually do not have appropriate games going against each other. You'll have games like, say, Call of Duty Modern Bro Sniper 3 versus My Little Pony Adventure Time or something like that. A licensed title that didn't have the same budget, didn't have the same marketing, didn't have the same time put into it, did not have the same staff. So when you're doing when you're trying to break down whether or not some truths about the industry are actually a real, genuine, unique thing, at the scientific level, a researcher would look at the information, say that no, these variables that I just mentioned earlier are not controllable, therefore the entire science is thrown out the window. The only way you could actually prove anything is if you, say, took two titles that had the similar budget, similar marketing, similar appeal, maybe had one variable between the two, like, say, violent versus non-violent, male versus female, all that other stuff. If you were able to find a way to get that done and then test people's opinions on it and see if they would actually buy the game, and if the game does get bought, what were its marketing sales, then you would have a definitive answer, and then that publisher would have the right to actually say, no, a female video game is never going to work because it just doesn't sell right. They never do that, though. They base it upon their years of experience and their ability to quote-unquote decide if whether or not that thing they're staring down is actually going to work. Unfortunately, the game industry, just like the tech industry, is a very, very scary and chaotic place. You never know what is going to work. You're supposed to be constantly searching for something. You're supposed to be constantly taking on the risk. You're supposed to be always searching for the next big thing that is going to sell the world all around in a circle. Unfortunately, game industry doesn't do that. There are great ways to improve your chances of finding that next great thing, and that would actually be to conduct some science. But most of the time, you don't get any science. In fact, the only times I've actually seen a reputable source actually give some good numbers for the game industry was the ESA, and even those numbers that they like to blaze by every single year really do not count. Unfortunately, we have no way to double check the information, just like how most game journalists have absolutely no way of finding out if that thing that they're going to be posting in the next 6 hours is actually 100% true. And game designers on a daily basis have openly stated that if they have to choose between their job and lying, they will lie. So the industry is breathing a culture of lying. We constantly are living in what I like to call a sea of doubt. A place where we really have no idea what's going on. We're not really sure about the numbers. We're not even sure about the most basic principles of our game industry. And unfortunately, a lot of the people that are coming new to the industry that actually went to school to study for this for the first time were probably trained by people that are not allowed to be openly honest about everything they worked on either. I mean, sure, they might give some opinions and they might be able to help guide us in the right direction, but the information that they are able to give probably is not going to be current with what's happening right there at the moment. So there's a sea of doubt. No one can really talk to each other. There's no communication. We can't figure out what game sold what our marketing numbers were, what our budget numbers were. We can't find any average means inside the industry. We have to rely on a few different websites to figure out if employees are happy or not. We have unconfirmed sources that say that the average game designer is only lasting in the industry about 2 years before leaving. That includes game developers, programmers, QA testers, and everybody else in the equation. So when we have a sea of doubt happening like that all the time, it really makes absolutely no fucking sense to hear publishers say this thing is not going to work because we say so. A, makes you look a little sexist, and in today's modern age, it's not a very good idea to be sexist ever. You're supposed to be expanding the demographic to sell to as many people as possible. You want everyone from grandma down the street to your brother to your neighbor to your son all playing your video game. You want as many different people at different age groups all playing the video game. There are ways to do it. There are absolutely ways to do it. Lots of games have had resounding successes, but unfortunately the game industry and the publishers especially would choose not to believe in them. Games like say Valkyria Chronicles, that everyone agrees is a well-rounded, well-established game, had very little actual marketing behind it when the game pumped out, while other games like say Modern Action Bro Sniper 3 has way too much clunkiness into it. You know, they copy the same thing they did the year before. You always hear the bro gamers complaining about it. You always hear everybody else whining about how they can't kill the guy with a knife fast enough. You're all sick fucks, by the way, for thinking that. And it's just, those games will get insane budgets that are unlike anything the world has ever seen before, marketing budgets that make absolutely no goddamn sense, and it's like they put everything they got, all their hopes and dreams into those games making it. But for these other games, like, I don't know, I don't think it's going to do what I think it's not going to do. That attitude, that whole idea of deciding ahead of time that this isn't going to work, so you're not going to fund it, that is going to screw it over. That means you're taking away the very easiest variable to control on the game to make it a success. If you do your shit, if the developer does its job, and they made a solid product, you need to support it so that it can actually have the kind of wings to it, so that people can actually see it going. I mean, the same thing could be going on for, say, other issues inside the game industry, like Dead or Alive. Apparently, the developers of the latest game decided, hey, we're going to keep the large breasts in our game because the commenters on YouTube were really upset. That is not a scientific process. You had the publishers in America telling everybody in Japan that you need to cut it back a little bit. It's the only thing we want. It's a very simple request. And honestly, it made a lot of sense over here. But Japan's response was to look at the comments on their trailers. A, no one wants to read the comments. It's a bunch of garbage. And B, who are you actually thinking is going to be actually spending time out of their day to actually post a comment? Not the people you want to be playing the game. Not a large general demographic of the audience. If you really want to, say, test the theory of whether or not your game needs large breasts in order to succeed, then actually do some proper testing. I personally wouldn't mind hearing an ad about such research going on. They certainly don't post them online ever, and I know plenty of other graduates that would absolutely love to go work on stuff like this. I'd actually do it for free if I could find a way to make it all work. I am interested in studying shit like this, and yet they never even bothered to do it. You just got a whole bunch of people looking at stuff online and saying, oh, okay, we're just gonna have to go do this thing. And then they stick themselves in the same rut that they were already in. It's like a self-manifested destiny where everyone is just constantly going around a circle hoping that that thing that they already think everybody likes is going to sell enough this time around. It's not the way to run a business. If you want to prove that something isn't going to work, then you need to actually fucking prove it. If you think a video game can survive with a female character in terms of sales, then you actually need to prove it. Just like how you also need to prove that everyone is ready for the next gen of consoles, which if you look online, they're not, but no one has actually done any science and actually proved the point. If you believe that a female is not able to code at the same rate as a male, then you actually need to prove it. A lot of the things that happen in the game industry on a daily basis are things we should actually start proving. Everyone makes these jokes, makes these comments, does these things, goes off in these wild directions, believing that they're right and everybody else is wrong. But they never stop, take a moment, think about what they're doing, and say to themselves, can I actually prove it?